Hi, everyone. I'm Gladys Mizrahi, and I want to welcome you to another great conversation. I'm really excited about today, not only about the topic, which is one of my greatest passions, but also our guest, who's an amazing professor. Today, if I had to describe in one word the series of events that compose the inauguration ceremony, it would be solemn or solemnity. With, for more than 200 years, America has witnessed the inauguration ceremonies of President and Vice President of the United States. In the swearing-in ceremonies, we represent both national renewal, continuity of leadership, and a tribute to our democracy. With my sincere compliments to the Chair Committee, Member Senator Amy Klobuchar, and producers Stephanie Carter and Ricky Kirchner, who managed to connect all the pieces of a puzzle in a well-executed event that had many, many challenges. Not only it was during a pandemic, but with a serious security concerns, as well as watched by millions and millions of people around the world. As I said when I started teaching events many, many years ago, an event needs to be perfect, but far away from normal. And this was it. As we go through the different steps of planning the event, there is one piece that is the key link to making a success and bringing all those wow moments together. And that is the emotional connection. Since the very first event, they set the pace for something emotional and wonderful. The ingredient they needed to connect all the country had to be something that we could all understand, feel, and create the sense of unity with no politics involved. And they managed to do that perfectly with the ceremony in memory for all those that passed away from COVID. A pandemic that has disrupted our lives and has taken more than 400,000 people away from us. Everyone either knows someone that has died or knows of someone. And unfortunately, that is the connection that we have today. In a beautiful, well-produced ceremony, brief and solemn, perfectly timed and coordinated, they managed to connect the whole country. They managed to connect the whole country in one moment of silence for those people that had passed away. The effect of 400 lights in the mall of the Capitol with the sunset behind them was priceless. So I'm hoping that I can share the picture with all of you. So hoping that you can all see this, because this was the effect that took precedent that day. The next was the event that was called the Field of Flags, with 191,500 US flags representing every state and territory. Another remembrance of the people that were not able to be there, because people could not get there because of COVID. But it was done with so much elegance that it also contributed to the solemnity of the event. Up to the closing evening, Celebrating America, hosted by Tom Hanks, was the most amazing virtual and live production of music, video, and photography that brought touching moments. In my opinion, was more memorable than the 7 or 10 inaugural balls that the presidents had to attend. But I can talk about events all day, and we do have the privilege of having a wonderful professor that has taught many of us the intricate world of events. Professor Craig Skilling, welcome.
And thank you. Thank you for having me, Gladys. This is amazing. You did a great job of really opening up and setting the stage and giving us some good insight and background on that particular event. So I'm excited to be here with you and reconnect We've had a chance to work together in the past and to really start on this topic. And, it's Happy 21. We're in 21 now. And I think the theme of smiling and being happy and positivity, that just has to cross over. And everybody, including the committee members that you mentioned, kudos to them on attempting to pull that off.
I know, and it's been, this year, our industry has been hit the most. The industry has completely closed. A lot of the people we have not been able to work with. So now, let me ask you something. What was in your mind the wow moments?
The wow moment. To really answer that fully to you, if I could point out one moment, but you mentioned that field of flags. I mean, that was phenomenal to see. That set a really stage, and the lights as well, for us to really understand what's going on in our country right now. And the overarching theme had to be developed and implemented, to perfection. And on that, I would say the committee pulled it off. The theme had to be unification, right? Unifying the country after what had happened. Would you agree? Right? Unifying. You said connecting. I used the word unifying. So I believe in that moment, it was accomplished. For me, in terms of another, just looking at, there were touch points throughout the morning and into the end of the night with the virtual events. But I love the diversity of our speakers and our performers leading up to the oath that had to be taken in that moment. I mean, from Amanda Gordon, this young, I had never heard of her up until that moment, the poet. And for me, in that one moment, all I kept thinking, and it was quick, we've lost Maya Angelou, and this young girl, and the way she eloquently put the words together to be able to leave the message of unification, she hit home on that. So Garth Brooks, his performance, I mean, you have somebody who's who's had a chance to perform for several presidents. So he doesn't see a side. He's a registered Republican, but it did not matter in that moment. He also saw the need for unification, and just to see that humanity at the very end when he's leaving and he's trying to shake the hands of all the former presidents, right? That's the human, that's the giddy child in you from a celebrity. So they pulled off picking the right individuals to come home. Now, some may disagree with Lady Gaga and her, but that's her personality and that's who she is. So the dress, and I saw the different memes and things, but in that moment, she sang so eloquently, and she hit home whatever she felt. Yes, along with J-Lo and Amy Klobuchar. I give kudos to her. I think she really added herself to another dimension. I saw her a lot. I mean, she did well during the convention, and she was one of the the nominees trying to get into that role. But the way she seemed very real, and I think she seemed so sincere. Either that or she's a great actress, but she really seemed sincere to want to do the same thing, unify the country, and bring this all together. So that was my take in seeing it from, I wouldn't just call it a fan, but from a professional standpoint, because that's a big part of it, right? The unification and putting your theme. If you're going to pull off your event, your theme has to come across. And sometimes we think in our world, the theme has to be, the floral design, the color, or we're going to do this and try to, no, that one word of unification was the theme, right, for the whole event.
And in my methodology, the first step is the objective.
Yes.
I call it a piece of the puzzle. So my first piece is the objective. So the objective was the swearing in, the whole ceremony, but they needed to link it to the theme. And I think they got it, they nailed it.
Yes.
So totally the poem, the words, the way she said it, it was touching. And that's why all the emotional connection was in it.
And we do that sometimes, right, within the event. So there was that somber moment, the moment where we're reflecting on all those who have passed, because of this pandemic. And that moment hit home. And that's that moment where if if you're not human and you don't have a wince of emotion inside of you, you had to at least come close to getting it, right? Because it was the visual. You got the visual even on television to be able to see that field of flags and what they represented. And that moment of silence to just stop and reflect, like you mentioned, on so many of us have been impacted in some shape or form. This is not normal. So in that one moment where you had to go somewhere as an individual, and I think they brought that drama, so to speak, even on television, whether you were there live and it was sparse in attendance for obvious reasons, but for all of us watching globally, because the global world is watching, everybody's watching. I think we all could kind of feel, like you said, connection. And then in that moment, we can stop and we purposely want that. As much as we want it to be organic, I know, on our side, behind the scenes, we're hoping that that's what we're looking for, because we're looking for unity. And this is how we're going to pull it across. We're going to stop in this moment. We're going to pan in on the camera. We're going to have a back image of them looking towards the mall, and silence. Powerful. They did a good job with that.
They did a good job. The picture was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything came together. But I know that when we discussed this, you and I agree on two different things on the oops moment. So
yes, there's always
tell me your oops moment.
All right, so first oops moment, something as simple that it may have been overlooked by the average individual that's really not familiar, or if you're really paying tune, the sound quality, the part of the oath where the president had to go ahead and recite his part, and he was a little bit away from the podium. And in that one moment, you can hear his voice is faded a little bit. The sound is a little bit lower, and it wasn't just my television, because others had brought this up to me and noticed it on that same token. And I'm like, oh, that was such a missed opportunity. The simple lavalier, right, to put on to him, to have somebody to have that on him, because you already know the optics that are around. The optics surrounded on this is that everybody will be met, right? We're all going to be distanced. We're going to be distanced. So I cannot be as close to you, in that moment as the judge is going ahead and delivering, the oath. So I think that was a missed opportunity. And then we also touched on the troops were a big thing, and you didn't mention that. And I mean, you want to give your take, and then I'll go ahead and.
Well, for me, the oops moment was the logistics of the troops.
Yeah.
That I know that we all saw that they were sleeping on the floor of the Capitol, and then next on the floor of the parking lot. So these are people that are fighting for us, that they were there for security reasons. And that is part of what we need to take care of. It's like remember when you went to Colombia to be one of my speakers? It was like, okay, yes, you're coming. I don't care where you sleep. I don't yes, care where you stay. Just yes, show up on that day. No, yeah, you really need to take care. They should have done alternative. There were hotels that were not being used. So scheduling, not all the 20,000 troops were needed at the same moment.
Right.
So it could have been done, and that was my take on the big oops. And on your point,
so how do we stop that, right? How do we go ahead? Do they anticipate that ahead of time? I think security played such a big role in pulling off this event along with the pandemic. So you had major challenges up front, but you're absolutely right. There is a way that they could have, similar to our volunteers, and I'm not comparing the troops to volunteers, but volunteers are an intricate part of your event. So we don't have volunteers working a 24-hour shift, right? We kind of space them. We allow them to break. We don't allow them to eat in front of the camera or the area where you're going to have your
party. You have a space where they can relax, where they can eat, where they can sleep, where they can take a shower.
Yes.
And I know those visuals,
yes. Now those visuals will probably go back for critics to come back and say about that moment on how that's going to be a part of the whole programming as a whole. If the media were able to see it, that means the public
outside.
Yeah.
And on touching on your point on the sound, remember in one of President Obama's inauguration that Beyonce preferred to tape her her
Yes.
singing as opposed to
Yes.
doing it live.
Yes.
And this is why, because she didn't want to risk that
Yes.
there was any wind or there was any glitch. And they
Yes.
criticized her because she taped it.
Yes. And that was, she was already getting some backlash from something prior to that, because during the press conference, right, they had the press conference moment. So that part she sung live. She wanted everybody to know during the press conference that will be the live segment for her. But I think she had just had something, a major performance where that was critical. They were very critical. So it carried over into the inauguration. Yes.
But look at what happened.
So pulled it off.
Like,
Yep.
I thought it was perfect, and I thought
Yes.
as behind the scenes, I would have agreed to that as well.
Yes.
Because you're going to remember that the president's words were not being heard as they were supposed to be heard, because just for one little thing, one little detail, a lavalier.
Yes. That's
That's
it.
it.
Right there. Put it
And
on.
it only takes one thing.
Yes.
So now that we covered, I know that it was a long event. The good thing that I thought when you told me that it was a very extended, that you were not going to see it, you were
Yes.
not going to be there the whole day, there was one positive thing, that you can go back and look at every single thing that happened
Yes.
during the day. And that would have not been possible if it would have been a live event.
Yes. Very true. Very true. And I think,
So we need to embrace that something positive has come out of all this.
yes. Well, content, right, drives everything these days. Content, you can have multiple content. You know, we're doing this live on Facebook, and then this can be saved via the Zoom that we're on. You can go ahead and re-share this on YouTube. Then from there, it can go back on your Instagram as live. So content is driving our industry, and I think that was a moment. They did a great job of being 2020 futuristic, whatever you want to call it, in terms of trending. They set up a website, right? The BidenInaugural.org website, where everything, was going to be streamed from. So there were the other platforms and the major outlets that were doing it. But, critics would say, oh, it's sparse. They should have had more people there. But, the trends that we're seeing, when everything got shut down last year, what was happening that was thriving? We saw still major events. My sons play video games, and I saw a concert within a video game. That individual that performed during that concert, there's no way he or she or they as a band would be able to get the same amount of mileage in a one-off concert show. So this is the same thing for what we're looking at for the inauguration. They set up the website, and they allowed fans and, just the country and the world to be able to connect. That was purposely done. Kudos to them. Now you go ahead and you stream everything throughout the day. So when they go back to look at, I haven't seen the numbers, but when they put those numbers out, there's no way a live attended event is going to reach what they're going to able to do on the eyeballs and the viewership of the whole event.
No, that's totally true.
Yeah.
Totally. So now with trends, let's talk a little bit about trends, because what I'm seeing is that social events are starting to come up, even though personally I'm a little concerned, because we do have a responsibility as planners on the spread on certain events, and you don't want to be a policeman. Just
Right.
don't talk to the other people, stay 6 feet apart, and it creates a very policing event. But on the corporate side, I've seen that there are no personal events at all.
Mhm.
Like I just spoke to, I have this two things that I need to balance. On one side, this week especially, I've gotten a lot of calls from the women saying, why don't you do a Power of the Heels event? We're ready, you can do it social distancing. And on the other hand, I talked with this possible sponsor and said, we will totally sponsor your event if you do it 100% virtual, because our company does not believe that you need to put people at risk right now. So
Corporate social responsibility, optics, imaging. So
yes,
yeah, that's a challenge.
so it's like, and especially women, we all want to reconnect, and you're
Yeah.
going to tell women not to
Yes.
speak, not to embrace. No, please. And I'm nothing. I go for the hug.
Oh my,
So
see, there it is. I think we're all, Gladys, we're all itching to still bond with each other and to have these events. Sometimes there's Zoom fatigue in some of us, and all of these things come in, but at the same token, we're still amidst a pandemic, and until we can safely, with 100% certainty, keep your attendees safe, are we willing to take on that risk and liability? Some are and some aren't, and I think that's the biggest challenge. But we are seeing events. You mentioned corporate. I had a chance to consult a few weeks back on a virtual healthcare event with the banking industry, and so I was a Zoom operator, helping them in terms of just creating a meeting and making sure the dignitaries and the people that were supposed to be in this meeting were going to be there. Facilitate the meeting, get them on, get them off, and go to the next meeting. It was in the Asian market, so the time zone different, but people from all over, the Middle East, from Europe, right, from the UK, and here in the States. So, I'm dealing with a lot of these corporate CEOs of healthcare companies, and then various investors and the banking, industry. And it was a corporate event, but normally when that event would happen, it would happen probably on one of the beach. They'll take up multi-stays and within the hotels, conferences going on, night events. So we're missing a lot of the industry has kind of been hit on that, but they're still having the meetings because the meetings have to go on. So they're doing those virtually, but those ancillary events that take place, they're not doing. So are they saving money? I don't, some may say yes, but
not only on the saving money, but some of the attendees that wouldn't have gone if it was a long trip or they didn't have the time, now
now
they're
going,
able to connect and you are able to reach globally. So I
yes,
think the next trend for our industry is that every single event is going to have to be streamed in some way or another.
yes,
Most people don't want to miss it, one. And two, you won't be able to leave all those people that once were connected to your event. And now that you're doing personal event, you're going to tell them, oh no, the ones in Asia that you connected to my event, no, you're gone. No way.
yeah, it's
You
true.
would want all those people coming to you. But it doesn't have to be the little squared Zooms.
It's true.
Like, we're
No,
designing something really cool for the next Power of the Heels event
nice.
for March in honor of Women's Month. And
Okay.
it doesn't have to be the little squares.
No, not at all. I think this is the meetings that we've we've seen the production side of virtual and live events kind of been enhanced. I've attended a couple of virtual conferences where they've gotten creative, and they're creating your avatar, and you get the gamification piece where you can also engage and be able to go into. I don't know if you've done an event like that, but it's a social, but you're they're not the AI, it's not the artificial intelligence portion or wearing the goggles. You don't have to do that. But I've seen that level of creativity, and
I tried,
okay,
but I'm going to be honest with you. The avatar at the beginning, I thought it was an amazing creation, but
yes,
by the time I knew how to work the little avatar to sit, to raise the hand, and if
yeah,
I cannot do it in a very low, easy way, then
yes,
my attendants will not be able to do it as well.
there you go.
And that's why I didn't move forward in that direction.
Yeah,
So that's the part. I know look at the night event at the inaugural. It incorporated video, live performance, and you couldn't have done the spectacular fireworks display that they did as a backdrop.
right.
And also on the other side, seeing President Biden carrying his baby grandson,
Yes.
that gave also the emotional part of it.
Yes. Yes.
So all that coming together, you cannot do it in
On
a
a
personal
Zoom,
event.
on a virtual, you're right. Yes. You want those touch points, but that's where hybrid comes into play, right? Hybrid
Yes.
is where you can bring a little bit of that on and kind of switch up and have the live components, on my side in the college sector and programming events. I have to give kudos to all of the event planners, the student activities, event workers, that they're still responsible for engaging these students. So some are now on the campus, some are at home or wherever their country they may be. So you have to be able to appeal to both crowds and both audiences. And that is something in itself that's very challenging, but you have to do it because it's part of, you're charged and tasked with producing loss leader events, right? Where you're not looking to make a profit on it. You're doing this for your stakeholders. And in this case, it's the students at the school side, but other event planners that we're seeing all over, they're in a similar boat. And they do have to execute X amount of events throughout the year for whatever that purpose or that objective is of that company. So if they're not incorporating the hybrid and the live touch points, you're right. It's very difficult. Although I've seen some very amazing production, virtual reality. They're sending out kits to different participants to really bring that to life. We've seen those happen. We saw the graduation special with LeBron James that he hosted last year once the pandemic was starting to come about.
You wouldn't have been able to get him on the graduation if it was personal.
Exactly. But
So,
there was a little bit of taped, a little bit of live. And I think that if they're able to do that, moving forward, that's the way to go. The challenge is looking at our mega events now, right? The mega events, where are those events going to take place? Who can do them? The Olympics per se, right? The Olympics they just released their plan today because the chatter was coming out weeks before by professionals like you and I on, can they do this safely? Will it happen? Yes or no? And we're all just guessing. So they had to have a strategy of communicating that.
the problem with that is not only as a massive event, they already have invested $3.5 billion into the Olympics.
Yes.
So it's a whole economic issue for Japan.
Yes.
And then what happens if they postpone it? What happens if they don't? It's like you cannot swim virtually.
Yes.
So
They said no more postponing. It's either going to happen or it's going to be canceled. But I'm pretty sure when you mention numbers like that, it's very difficult to cancel. But
I think it's going to happen, and I think there is a way of making it virtually.
mhm.
Look, if we were able to see an event with just 20,000 troops, just mobilized in a safe way,
Yeah.
so they're going to make it happen.
Yeah, they probably have, before they do the whole flag torch lighting start. I think that starts sometime in March. So they're going to have to make an announcement on what they're doing before March. So we have the next, 4 to 8 weeks to be able to hear, yes, we're
What's
going
on.
It's going to happen. Yeah. So
The other massive events like concerts, I don't think that it's going to happen even before the fall,
yeah.
because, and that you will lose the experience, because we
Yes.
can see the concert virtually, but the experience of being in a live concert, that's very difficult to achieve.
Yes.
But
And a lot of them have been canceled. We're in our backyard here in South Florida. We've seen major festivals like Ultra.
Ultra was just canceled.
Yeah, they just canceled that. But then in Germany, Tomorrowland is a festival, and they've moved forward with that. But there's a virtual component to it. So, I don't know, for Ultra, I would have, at least just for the branding of it and to keep your fans
I
engaged,
would have
done something.
kept it in a virtual hybrid.
Some type of virtual hybrid way that I can still keep it without. But they rely heavily on heads and beds and tourism impact and getting the international community to come here. And the restrictions that are in play are tough. And then, yourself being a commissioner, you understand those conversations and what they're dealing with in the city of Miami. They were already under a microscope these last few years on.
Can you imagine adding up a super spreader?
Exactly.
Because these are
So,
teams that are not even listening.
there it is. Yeah.
So we're out of time. I know that we can talk about events all day.
I love it.
But is there anything that you want to leave, that you want to say before we leave?
I think we can sum up when we look at the industry and what's happening. We're going to get back there. This is just, it's a break. And this is your profession, you have to get creative to be able to still generate revenue during the times. And I think that can still happen. And while you're doing that, and a good case in point, I'm going to use a local reference for us here in South Florida, Winterfest, the Winterfest Boat Parade. Even though, and you may know, Dawn, even though that event was canceled and they got a little bit of backlash for canceling it so early, the event happens in December. They canceled it, I think, in August of last year. She was still able to profit and make a profit by doing some ancillaries and doing some creative things behind the scenes during that time period. So more of us are going to have to think about that. If we're not doing that major festival, the one-off or the annual or whatever it is, how can we still do something to make a living, so to speak, but to still meet whatever objective, like you mentioned, is happening? And I think we can do it. It's just kind of putting the right groups together, the stakeholders together, and having that, fortitude to say, we're going to go forward. We're going to get back. It's going to happen. The Super Bowl is going to happen, right, over, in Tampa in a few weeks. So
I just want to see how the dogs are going to work.
At the arena.
They're doing the dogs at the arena.
Yes.
Because now I know the dogs have done an amazing job in Europe.
Yeah.
So that can be something that we can look into. Instead of testing everybody, that is a little pricey. And when you have like 1,000 people, and if a test, if you can get it wholesale for like $40, that's $40,000. That's $4,000 just in your budget for testing.
Yes.
But if you can get the dogs and it works, that's a step forward.
There it is. So we can end it on unity and hope, and the future is going to come back. And I'm excited still. I'm excited. I'm on a journey, myself. And, we were hit by the pandemic, right where I teach, but I'm looking forward to the future as a free agent educator and working with various other institutions already and having this conversation and being able to, keep it going and consult an industry. So, continue to follow the journey. I'm at Craig Skill on all my platforms, that. So we'll stay in touch. And I look forward to having you as one of my guest speakers in a future class soon.
I would love to, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Until next week, stay safe and have a great week. Bye.
Take care.